This is Justice. Welcome to a very quick Destiny gameplay video where I'm here to talk about the Destiny King's Fall raid and the Taken King DLC. Over the weekend, I've been playing it with a bunch of people I know, and we managed to get pretty far. We actually managed to get all the way past the Ogre, finally, after what felt like forever. It seriously felt like waking up from a really long nightmare where the same thing was happening over and over. We kept trying to get him with different strategies, but he would just get enraged and we just ruin our fun. And then there's some RNG BS where during one of the times he just decided to ignore the aggro and just slam down and kill everyone. So, you know what, there's that. But enough about that. The raid itself is really well designed. I'll be honest, it's a really fun raid. It has a lot of stages to it. It's actually very exciting, very pulse-pounding, and beating that Ogre was one of the best moments in the raid. However, I do think the raid might be a bit too long, and that's not a complaint based on any kind of whinginess like, oh, I can't handle it or whatever. It's just that when I reached the Daughters of Oryx, which is the next boss after the Ogre, it did reach this point where I was like, I feel like this raid is just a Mega Man boss rush, which is pretty much just a platforming section and a boss, a platforming section and a boss, a platforming section and a boss. And yes, there might be a puzzle or there might be some sort of special condition to beating the boss, but I do think a lot of it was just kind of drawn out, whereas I feel like something like the Vault of Glass, in my opinion, was actually very well designed. It had, you know, a few decent puzzles, you had to complete different sections, and then you had the big dramatic boss at the end. I thought that was actually really well done. Crota's End as well, I think those are pretty good. But I think with King's Fall, I feel like they wanted to make it as kind of contentful as long as possible. I know contentful isn't exactly a correct term, but they wanted to put as much content in the game as possible before people, you know, either get bored or just complete it too easily. I admit, the challenge is exciting, the challenge is engaging, and it gives people a reason to level up their gear, go out there, go get better stuff. However, I do think that the length of the raid is a bit obtuse, because that Daughters of Oryx challenge, well, admittedly, the Daughters of Oryx boss isn't anywhere near as frustrating as the Ogre, where you knew what to do for the Ogre Golgoroth, but he just wouldn't die. He just had way too much health, and he would just sometimes ignore your aggro and so on. With this Daughter of Oryx thing, it's just a little bit frustrating, only because there's this ridiculous platforming puzzle in the middle of the fight, and you can't even hurt the bosses until you do it. And I just feel like this raid, sorry, not even the boss, this raid would have been a good, you know, nice, sizable chunk if it was just that first section with the relics, the War Priest, one more platforming section, the Ogre, and then Oryx himself. I feel like that would have been a nice way to finish it, because the amount of time it takes to beat the Ogre on its own, like the War Priest has some people stuck, but the amount of time it takes to beat the Ogre on its own, I feel like should be sizable and satisfying enough. I feel like adding an additional extra layer before that was unnecessary. I think the platforming was fine, but I do think the second to last platforming, as in before you get to the Daughters, once again, unnecessarily long, and I think there's a point where it stops being fun and it becomes work. The first platforming section was really okay, it was fine, it was like the swinging things. The second platforming section with the ships was very creative, I loved that. After that though, after the War Priest, you know, first the Shrine, then the War Priest, and then the Ogre, I felt like, you know what, this is going on way too long, and I'd be happy if you finished it. Anyway, tell me what you think about the raid. That's just my personal opinion. I just think the raid does drag on a bit too long. I'm interested to see what you think, so let me know in the comments. See you guys later.
The spark has arrived.